Hello students, I am Sam Sir and we are in the sixth chapter of your textbook known as population. Now I want to tell you at the start that in case you want to take arts as your subject in your 11th and 12th standard and for your higher studies, then this chapter will form the basis on which uh, you'll be able to better understand those chapters because those chapters are mainly a lot of it is about population and the demographic studies. So let's start with a simple definition of population. The number of inhabitants that live in a particular area at the same time. That is a population. We are talking about the present time. If you look at some towns which were once in existence, let us say Mohenjo-daro or Harappa, we cannot say that the population of those days contribute to the population of these days because those people have lived in a different time, right? So we're talking about the present time. Now, the study of population is important to geography because people are also a resource for the nation. People are the human resource, and we depend on the natural resource. And a land can have only a certain amount of natural resources. And if the number of people who are depending on those natural resources are more, then that puts a pressure on the natural resources. The natural resources are used by people and for the people, and the natural disasters also affect the people. That is the reason why population is studied. Now, some terms which you will come across connected to population. First is the population growth. This is the number of inhabitants which have increased. When we say a population change, it may also be a negative number. The population might have decreased also. So when we say population change, we say the change in the number of people in a specified area during a specified time period. And absolute population growth is an absolute number. It is, let us say, if you're talking about a decadal population growth, decade is a period of 10 years. So we say that today's population, from that you subtract the population which was there 10 years ago of a particular place, and then you get to the absolute population growth. The annual growth rate is the percentage increase. Here we're talking about percentage per year. Annual is per year. Now, you may be asked to differentiate between population growth and population change. Although the terms look very similar, there is quite a bit of difference, and for your examination, this becomes important, and for for your knowledge. When we say population growth, we are talking about the number of increased number of people in a population. That is known as population growth. Now, in population change, it is the change in number of people during a specified time period. In population growth, you determine it by the difference between the birth rate and the death rate, and plus the migration. Birth rate increases the population of a place, death rate decreases the population of a place. Migrations are of two types. In migration is the number of people who have moved into an area. Out migration is the number of people who have moved out of area. So in migration will increase the population, and out migration will decrease the population. When it comes to population change, this is determined by the difference between the sizes of the population from the beginning to the end of a certain time period. Let us say that we are in August 2020 now, and we want to know what is the population change, annual population change. So, what do? Is we take the population of India till August 2020, and from that, we subtract the population which was there in August 2019. The figure that you get is the population change. Now, population growth can be expressed as a percentage also, and it can also be expressed as a absolute number also. But when it comes to population change, we usually express that as an absolute number only, not as percentage. The population increases as it grows. Naturally, when we're talking about growth, we are talking about increase. But when we're talking about change, it can be an increase and it may be a decrease also. For example, now you know about the COVID-19 condition, the population is decreasing. It may be one of the factors which is making the population decrease. Now, population growth does not alter the population composition. Composition means where the people are located or what is their religious faith or uh, what is their occupation and all that. But when we say about population change, this can alter the population composition. When the population changes, it can change the population composition as well. Now, this is one term. You know, density, which you come across this term in science, is the mass upon volume. Similarly, here we are talking about the total population per total area. That is, how many people are there on average on a given area of land. That is the population density. So if you look at this map, you know this in this map, you can see if you look at the legend, it shows different shades of gray, and it says less than 200, between 201 and 400, so on and so forth. And the black box above is, you know, it's a population density of more than 1001 people per square kilometer. And here you can see the Delhi, Northern Capital Territory of Delhi, is a dark black colored spot. So this map gives you an idea of the population density of India. Now, again, some factors, some terms which are required for you to know, and they are all very easy. When we're talking about death rates, suppose there's a population of 1000 people, and the number of deaths which take place in those 1000 people who are there in an area in 1 year, that is the death rate. Similarly, for a population of 1000 people, the number of live births in a year is the growth rate. We're talking about live births. We are not talking about the babies who died before being born, right? And the natural increase of population is the difference between the growth rate and the death rate. Now, some more terms. You know, when we say migration, we mean movement of people from one region to another. That is known as migration. It can be within a country. When it is within a country, we say it is an internal migration. Example is somebody from, let us say, from Bihar, he wants to come to Delhi to find a job. So if he comes with his family, we say he is an internal migrant. He may come alone also, but if he is moved from one place to another, not for just for a few days, we mean to say that he is there for a purpose. He is there to earn his living, and that is known as migration, and that is an internal migration. It can also be between countries. For example, you find a job in the United States of America. There, so then you migrate to United States of America. That is an international migration from India to the US. Now, internal migration naturally does not change the population of the country, but it does affect the distribution of population. Some person who's skilled from X area has gone to Y area. So Y area has become richer in skilled person, and X area has become poorer in a skilled person. All right, that is one way of saying it. One example of explaining that. All right. So even marriage is a good example of internal migration. The ladies, the girls, when they get married, they move out of their father's and mother's house. They go to their husband's house. Except if you are Manipuri, if you are a male and if you get married, then you move to into your wife's house. Then, when we say migration, there are two factors. You know, one is known as push factor, the other one is pull factor. Push factor is the adverse condition. You know, that is the bad condition that makes the person think, no, I don't want to live a life like this. I want a better life. I deserve a better condition of living, and so I will move out of this place. That factor is known as the push factor, which is pushing him out of that place. And the other is the pull factor. These are the positive factors which seem to invite people to settle down in a new place. All right, sometimes if you think that no, I want to settle down in Australia, then suddenly you'll find Australia seeming a very attractive place for you. It's inviting you with open arms. And then you find that the government is also doing that. They want skilled people, and you have the skills, so you move out. Now, migration influences both the population of a place as well as composition of rural and urban areas. Usually, in terms of age and sex composition, when we say that, usually in the age group, which is a working age group between, let us say, 16 years and 58 years or 59 years, and usually the males, they move out of their uh, place and go to another place to find a job. So what happens is the rural area becomes poorer by the working age males, and the urban areas become richer by the working age males. That is the meaning of this term. When we say occupational structure, the distribution of population according to different types of occupation is known as occupational structure. Now, a certain population may have X percentage of bankers, Y percentage of teachers, Z percentage of retired people, and so on and so forth. Now, census is the process of counting the population of the country, right? So, when we say census of India, we mean the actual counting of the population of India. It's a big job, and we do that once in 10 years. The factor of migration is also studied in this. We have a lot to say about this in 12th standard when you come. Now, the first census in India was done in the year 1872, but it was not a complete census. It was an incomplete census. But later on, the first complete census in India was done in the year 1881. And since then, India is doing the census every 10 years. uh, sorry, since 1951, because before 1951 we had not got our independence, and then there were partition and all that. So from 1951, our government decided no, we want to do the census, and every 10 years the census is done, and the census figure of today is that of the year 2011. And when you approach your exam time in next year in 2021, the new census, the latest one would have been in place, because it's going to happen in the year 2021. Now the question is, why do we need to know about population? We need to know we need to have a basic understanding of all the aspects of environment, and people are one of the most important aspects of the environment. When we say aspects of the environment, the number of people, their distribution, what are their qualities, is this number growing, is it reducing, that is what we mean by the aspects of the human geography. All right, that we need to know. In 12th standard, you have a book known as Fundamentals of Human Geography, and you have these studies in depth. The people are the producers and consumers of Earth's resources. Naturally, we consume what the Earth produces, and we produce for ourselves, mainly for our own consumption. Therefore, it's important to know how many people live there, and where do they live, what is the distribution, and how and why are their numbers increasing. Sometimes their numbers decrease also, as in the present days. So why are they decreasing, how are they decreasing, and what are their characteristics? Now we ask three questions which are main questions about population. First is population size and distribution. How many people are there and where are they located? That is the first thing we need to know. The second thing is population growth and the process of population change. That is, how has the population grown and changed over time? Third is characteristics or qualities of the population. Here we are talking about the specialities of the population. What are their age and sex composition? What is it about literacy? What is it about occupational structure? What is it about the health condition of the people living there? Now, some facts and figures about India. Today, as on as per the figures of March 2020, the population of India is 138 crore people. Now, this is equal to 17.7% of the world's population, and this 17.7% of the world's population has to fit on 2.4% of the Earth's surface area, because the 3.28 million square kilometer surface area of India is equal to 2.2% of the Earth's total surface. So on 2.4%, you're trying to fit 17.7%. Now you understand this. That's going to lead to crowding, and that's going to lead to pressure on the earth to provide its resources, right? So there's a connection between the people and the land. The land can have only certain sustainability, and we are talking about that, and that is the reason why we're studying this population in geography. Otherwise, what is the need for studying about population in geography? Geography is about earth, isn't it? Now, if you look at the states of India, Uttar Pradesh has the highest population of all the states. That is 23.15 crore people, and that equals to 16.77% of India's total population. The least populated state is Sikkim with only 6.58 lakh people, and that is 4.76% of India's population. Lakshadweep has got only 66,000 people. That's not a state because that's a union territory, and it's a population which keeps on moving in and out because of the armed forces, and because of the people in the government service. They are usually transferable, so they keep moving in and out of actually. Now let us see the population distribution of India. Now almost half of India's population lives in these five states. Uttar Pradesh, as you know, is the most populous. Then Maharashtra, Bihar, West Bengal, and Andhra Pradesh. Now, if Uttar Pradesh were a country instead of being a state, it would be the fifth largest in the world by population. If you write it down as rank, the countries would be China first, that is most populous, then India, second most populous, United States of America, and Indonesia, and then fifth would have been UP if that were a country. Now, it's interesting to note that Uttar Pradesh has a population larger than Pakistan, the entire country itself. Likewise, Rajasthan has a very big land area, the biggest land area of all states, but it carries only 5.5% of the population of the country. Do you know why? Because most of it is arid, it's dry, it's a desert place with a water shortage, with very rough weather conditions, climatic conditions, very hot in winter, summer, and very cold in winter, and that makes Rajasthan not a preferred choice of people. Now, in this map, the darkest portion you can see is in the northern plains. The northern plains, because of the fertility of the land and good water supply, the water table is not very deep, and also historic reasons, because we have the Indus Valley civilization to one end, that is the western end. For all these reasons, that is a very populated area. Now, if you look at the distribution of population in India, state-wise, uh, starting on the right hand side, upper right hand side, you have UP 16% or 16.77%. Then you have Maharashtra, Bihar, West Bengal, Andhra Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Rajasthan, Karnataka, etc., etc., then the union territories. Another important and interesting thing is, this kind of map with dots is known as a dot plot. Now here each dot represents the population of 2 lakh people, that is 200,000 people. Here it's easy to see the northern plains being highly populated, and if you look at the state of Jammu and Kashmir and Arunachal Pradesh, you have the dots located far away. There are places where the dots are absent altogether. Now, some more figures about the population density. The average population density of India is 464 people per square kilometer. If you divide 138 crore people by the land area, that is 3.28 million square kilometer, you come to this figure, 464 people per square kilometer. The highest population density is in Bihar, that is 1,106 people per square kilometer, whereas the lowest is in Arunachal Pradesh, that is 17 people per square kilometer. What could be the reason for Arunachal Pradesh having such a low density? It's just a neighbor of, you have China as one of the neighbors, a troublesome neighbor, and you have the military presence there. You have the forested areas, less development is there. People move out of that place. People live in difficult conditions. That is the reason of the low population density of Arunachal Pradesh. Then we talk about the nature of population. First of all, population itself is dynamic phenomena. We cannot say that India has got the population of 138 crore people, full stop. By the time we finish this video, you know, let us say that this video is going to last for half an hour. So by the time you finish listening to me, some 1,400 babies would have been born. Can you imagine that? In half an hour, we have 1,400 new human beings getting added to our country, the total population. So we say that population is a dynamic phenomena because the number, I gave you an example, changes, distribution changes, composition changes, and they are constantly changing. All right. Now, similarly, when we say uh, that people die also, unfortunately. So in 24 hours, some 25,000 people die. That makes it some 1,040 people dying every year. That's the average. It may be more, it may be less, and it may be even more because of the COVID-19 conditions. So that's a figure to give you an example, an idea of what changes are happening all the time. It's constantly taking place. Now, the factors that influence the nature of population is birth. Birth always increases the population. Deaths. Death always decreases the population. And migration. It increases the population in one place and decreases it in some other place. Now, similar to the birth rate, you have the migration rate, and presently it is 0.369 per population of 1,000 people. And when you look at it state-wise, the emigrants, that means the people who migrate out, are known as immigrants, are maximum from the states of Uttar Pradesh and Bihar because of the poverty and more population, less opportunities in those states, and because of other problems. They want to go out. They usually go to West Bengal because it's close by. They also go to Delhi. They also travel to Mumbai. A lot of people from UP and Bihar are working in Mumbai, and so many other cities. Now, Mumbai today has got the population of 21 million people, 21.41 million people. Now, out of these 21 million people, some 3 million people are migrants. That is, they are from outside, they do not belong to Maharashtra even. They are outside from outside Mumbai. They are mostly from UP and Bihar. And what do they do in Mumbai? Yes, they work there, they do some odd jobs, but they consume the resources of that place. So they are putting a pressure on that place, on the resources of the place. In return, they are getting their livelihood, they are able to support their families back in their villages. So that is also required. Now, when we talk about population growth, it is calculated as absolute number. It can also be a percentage, as we told before. The absolute number is calculated for a decade, because decade is a time of census. Every 10 years we have the census, whereas the percentage growth is calculated per annum. We can take last year's population number and this year's population number, compare them, and then see what is the percentage growth. The growth rate of India is decreasing, but the absolute number of people added to the population is still increasing. Because India is becoming a developing country now, that is one of the characteristics of a developing country and developed country, as opposed to underdeveloped country. Underdeveloped country has got a higher growth rate, the higher birth rate also. You'll come to know that the death rate is also very high there. That is, the life expectancy is very less. But when the a country develops, the growth rate decreases, actually decreases. But still, the absolute number of people which are added is more. This is because of the large starting population. So, where even a small percentage increases the amount by a large number of people. Just to take an example of a shepherd. Now, let us imagine that the shepherd has got 1,000 sheep. 1,000 sheep he is having. Now, there's another shepherd who has got 50 sheep. And let us say that the one who's having 50 sheep, his sheep reproduce at a higher growth rate than the other fellow who's having 1,000. But then, because that other fellow is already having 1,000 sheep to start with, so there, even if the rate is less, his number of births of lambs there will be more. That is the meaning of the statement. Now, whatever is the increase, even if it is a small increase, let us say 15.5 million people, when you compare to 138 crore people, it's not a big number. But these 15.5 million people will also require food, they will require clothing, they will require water, they will require housing, they will require healthcare, they will require educational facilities, they will require the government subsidies, and everything is required by them also because they are also human beings. So, so whatever efforts are made to conserve the resources, they get neutralized even by a small increase in the population. Now, birth rate is high in underdeveloped society, that is not developed properly, and it is low in developed society. Surprisingly, death rate is also high in underdeveloped society and low in developed society. Now, I told the word surprisingly, I'll just clarify it now. In a developed society, the death rate reduces due to technological advancements in medical field. You have the MRI, you have the CT scan, you have the X-ray, you have the modern medicine, and you have the modern doctors, and you have modern healthcare facility, which reduces the death rate. And uh, if it is a developed country or a developing country, both the birth rates and death rates is low. In fact, in a very developed country, the birth rate has fallen to such an extent that they want people to migrate into their country. Canada is one example. Australia is another example. New Zealand is yet one more. Their birth rate has fallen so drastically, they invite people to come from other countries to their country because it's an highly advanced society. About this also you have an in-depth study in your standard 12. Now, process of population growth and change is influenced by three things: the birth rate, the death rate, and the migration. Now, in a population, when you look at the composition by age, you have three categories. One is children who are less than 15 years old. And then you have the working age. This is also biologically reproductive age. That is the age of 15 to 59. And then you have the aged people, the retired people who are above 59 years, right? So now out of this two, the first one and the last one, that is the children below 15 years of age, and the last one, that is the elderly people. Together, they are known as dependent population, right? Because the children are not economically productive. We are talking about children who are having normal childhood, not the ones who are doing child labor. These children need to be provided. You need to provide them with food, clothing, education, medical, healthcare, and etc. Similarly, the people who are above 59 years of age, they have retired. Many of them do not get any pension. So they become dependent on the working age group for their sustenance. They are not available for employment except they if they voluntarily agree to that. Some old people can sit in a shop, for example. Some can become a manager depending on their experience and also depending on their medical condition. Some people are very qualified, very experienced, very knowledgeable, but their health does not allow them to work. But the middle age group, that is 15 to 59, they comprise the working population. 15 is a child, but many people, many children of that age group, they work because they have to support their families, which is a very sad part, but it is true nonetheless. They are economically productive and they are also biologically reproductive of that age group. The percentage of children and aged affect the dependency ratio. Dependency ratio because children are and the aged people are depending on the working people, and that is the reason is they belong to unproductive groups. Now let's talk about something known as sex ratio. Again, this is important for you because it's repeated in standard 12. The number of females, we're talking about the number of females when you compare to 1000 males in a population. Understand that. There are countries which are comparing it the other way around. But in our country, take this that number of females per 1000 males in a population is known as sex ratio. Now, the average sex ratio of India is 924. It means in a population of 1000 males, for 1000 males, there are 924 females. Now, Kerala has got this in a different way. There are more number of females there. That is 1084 females per 1000 males. The lowest is in Haryana and Daman and Diu, which is a union territory. Now, what could be the reason of having a low sex ratio? Female infanticide, female feticide, violence against women, crime against women, even the tradition of collecting dowry. These are the factors uh, which are putting influence on the sex ratio. Now, this everything put together, this is an indicator of social equality. How much equality do you give to the females? Uh, what is your attitude towards females? Sex ratio has always remained unfavorable for females in India, and this is one of the reasons. There's a term known as Human Development Index, about which you have that in 12th standard. India is not faring well internationally in its HDI, the Human Development Index, because of these problems. It's not a personal opinion that if I have daughters, what is it to you? Or if I have more sons, what does it matter to you? It's not that at all. It's a matter of the country's reputation. Now, when we say literacy, there's a definition which is there in the second statement here. A person of 7 years age and above who's able to do these things. First is read, second is write, and third is do basic calculations with understanding. Such a person is said to be a literate person. He should meet these three conditions. Now, with that in mind, Literacy means, now go to the first sentence. Only an informed and educated citizen can make intelligent choices. Such citizen is aware of and able to perform his part of rights and duties toward the society. Now, when we come to the literacy rate in India, average comes to 81.3%, and in states, Kerala has the highest, almost 92%, and BR is the lowest, around 64%. The male literacy rate is much better than the female literacy rate. 75% is the average for males, and 54% is the average for females. The state of Rajasthan has got the lowest female literacy rate. That also tells us how we treat our ladies, how we treat our females, our daughters, our mothers. Now we talk about occupational structure. About this, you have 3 chapters in 12th standard. So it's important for you. Now, when we say primary occupation, these are everything that is related to the natural resource, that is to the lithosphere, that is land, atmosphere, that is air, hydrosphere, which is water, and biosphere, which is the living things, animals and plants. So, any activity which is directly related to these natural resources are known as primary occupation. For example, agriculture is, you're talking to about land and the plant growing on it. Fisheries are the animals in the sea or water. Animal husbandry, again, you're talking about the animals. Quarrying and mining is you taking out some ores and minerals from the earth. When we say secondary occupation, every type of manufacturing, that is, manufacturing means converting raw material into finished product by making it undergo certain process is known as manufacturing. All right, all type of goods and construction are taken into consideration as secondary occupation. You also add value, isn't it? Now, let us say that cotton sells for 40 rupees a kilo, and the cotton yarn, the thread, sells for 80 rupees a kilo. There's a value addition of 2 times between 40 and 80. But if you were to buy a pair of trousers, and let us say it weighs 1 kilo, and the cost of the trouser is 800 rupees. So the trousers have increased the value of cotton by 20 times, because 20 into 40 is 800 rupees. So that is known as value addition. That is done in secondary occupation. Then in tertiary occupation, you have every kind of service, whether it's transportation, communication, commerce, administration, banking, insurance, etc. Sorry about that. Now, what is the relationship between occupation and development? Right? In developing countries, more people are involved in primary activities. Even in underdeveloped countries, India has about 64% of our workforce engrossed in the primary sector. So we still call ourselves a developing country. We're not developed country yet. In developed country, more people are involved in secondary and tertiary activities. India has 13% of the people working in secondary sector, 20% in the tertiary sector. Now, there's a shift here. In India, you can see the shift. When you see the shift, you can judge that from the status of developing country, India is going to get the status of a developed country. We are in that process now. There is a shift in favor of secondary and tertiary sector because of growing industrialization and urbanization. It's natural for the population of a country to remain healthy. Now, for that, the state government and the central government, they take a lot of measures. In many countries, it is mandatory, it is compulsory to serve in the armed forces for certain years before working as an ordinary civilian. And if that is done, you know that the health condition of the person, of the nation, is good, because only a person when is really healthy in his body can serve in the armed forces. And today also, if you see around you in your neighborhood, if you find a person who's retired from the army, his or the other armed forces, his health condition is much better than a person who has not served in the army. So that makes health as an important component of population composition. and it has a direct relationship with the development of the country. A country full of sick and ill people cannot be a developed country. It cannot simply cannot be. In a developed country, the death rate falls. I told you about the medical development, which reduces the death rate, and life expectancy at birth increases. Now, what is this life expectancy at birth? Now, I'll give you one example. First, let us read the second sentence, then I'll tell you. How long, on average, a newborn can expect to live if the current death rates do not change? That is known as life expectancy at birth. Now, to put it that in simple words, let us say that your grandfather today is 70 years old. So, he was born in, just go back 70 years on that particular date. And he was not the only person to have been born on that date. There were several people all over the country who were born on that date. So there should be, technically speaking, several people, as many people who were born on that date. Let us say that your grandfather was born on 19 September 1938, and he is almost 82 years old today. That's a better number, not 70 years. Okay. So 1938, on certain day he was born. He was not the only one to be born. There was several children, several baby, thousands of them born on that particular date. But where are they today? Are they still alive? Because the death rate today remains the same, isn't it? But are those people alive? Your grandfather is alive. But are those people who were born with him alive yet? Or are they dead and gone? So, if your grandfather is alive today, what kept him alive? If he is living in a good condition, he was in a good health, he is getting good medical health care, he is getting good nutrition, and he is having good soundness in mind and body as well, then naturally he will be alive today. Of course, he may need some medical care now and then. That's the second thing, but the essential thing is he is alive. So that is the meaning of life expectancy at birth. Now let's look at how it is in India. Now we have certain improvements in health status. First is the improvement of public health. The government of India as well as the United Nations, they do a lot for the improvement in public health. Second is the prevention and control of infectious disease. You know about the COVID-19 conditions and what the controls government has put. Lockdown, this lockdown 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. They're unlocking number 1.0, unlocking number 2.0, social distancing, this awareness about wearing the mask and washing your hands and all that, all that. All right. So these are the measures which the government does to make people aware of the condition. Of course, COVID 19 happened for the first time, and it may not happen again. It's a one-off condition, right? So whenever there's a infectious disease outbreak, then it has to be controlled. First of all, it has to be prevented. For example, we talking about malaria or cholera, it has to be first prevented. If it happens, then it has to be controlled. That is the meaning of prevention and control. Third is application of modern medical practices in diagnosis and treatment. Here we're talking about medical science and advancements in medical science. So that has also happened in India. Earlier there used to be only one AIMS, All India Institute of Medical Sciences. Now we have several AIMS in several states of India. We have modern medicines, we have modern hospitals, we have foreign tourists coming down to India for medical health care. We call that as medical tourism. Why is it happening? Because we have the facilities. Now, also important are the prevention of death of newborns and maternal deaths. Many ladies they die during childbirth, and many babies they also die as soon as they are born. So this has to be prevented. And good healthcare facilities also reduce the death of children. When we say children, we're talking about the age group 0 to 15 years. That is the time where they can catch infections. So that is the time when they are given vaccinations. and the sole reason for vaccination is to stop them from dying. Now, why do we need to do all these things? Isn't death only also natural part of life? True, it is that, but people are the resource of the country. Today they are consuming the resources of the country, but tomorrow they will add to the economic development of the country. You and I will work, we will earn money, we will feed our family, and also put money uh, into the veins and arteries of the country. That is the reason why the government takes all these efforts, and that is done in a democracy mostly. If it's a communist country, North Korea, let people die, who cares? That is the attitude there. Sorry about my throat. Now, what are the problems faced by India in the matters of healthcare? The per capita calorie consumption is much lower when we look at other countries. That means we have a large portion of the population which are having malnutrition. Malnutrition means the person not getting the proper nutrition. Now, then what is the proper nutrition? It depends. It depends on age group. It depends on sex also, whether a person is male or female. It depends on the level of activity. Naturally, a sportsman or a person in the army will have larger nutritional requirement than a person who's not active, not very active physically. One more concern is the safe drinking water and proper sanitation. It's only available to one third of the people in the rural population. When we say safe drinking water, the water is there, but it's not of good quality. That is the meaning. If the water itself causes diseases, then what is the use of such water? All right, and proper sanitation is the sanitation and hygiene according to certain minimum standards that's not available in to the rural population. Now, India has got a very good number of young people. Some 20% of our population is, in the age group of 10 to 19 years. This is a significant age group, which, when properly nurtured, can provide substantial benefit to the country and to their own families also. Now, we have some problems in this age group. First of all, okay, you might be from a well to do family and you take your food very well, your nutrition, whatever is required, your diet, you get the proper diet and nutrition. But every child is not so lucky. There are people who are getting improper nutrition, they don't have proper diet. Adolescents, they require higher nutritional need because they're growing, their bones are growing, their muscles are growing, their bodies are growing, so they need more nutrition, and they're more active also, they're active in games and sports and so many things. But when this need is not met, it leads to malnutrition. And often in girls, because they need iron also, because they lose iron from their body all the time, right? So when they lose iron from their body, their ability to carry oxygen, because oxygen is carried by hemoglobin in the blood, and one of the main components of hemoglobin is iron. If that is not there, then they have a condition, a disorder known as anemia, and that's very common in girls in India. Now, to take care of all these problems, India has got a policy. It's known as National Population Policy 2000. It's a 20 years old policy, and these are the 5 points it has. First is to ensure proper nutritional and dietary needs of the adolescents. The second is strengthening legal measures to stop and prevent child marriage. Surprisingly, child marriage still takes place in India, in the rural areas, in the states which are not developed, it still takes place. Third is raising awareness favoring late marriage and late childbearing. Now, in India, 20s is the age when most people get married. 21, 22, 24, let us say by age 29. And the people who get married from 30 years onwards are less in number. But when you look at a developed country, Often the marriage takes place in the age group of 40s, between 40s and 50s. And when they are reaching 50 years of age, they are not of childbearing age anymore. So they adopt children or they remain childless by choice. That again reduces their population growth rate. But in a underdeveloped country or a developing country like India, where we still want our children to get married by the age just after their graduation, if they're 20, 21 years old age, let them go to their house, we say, or let them get married, and then that boy will become a responsible person. It usually does not happen, but that is the thought of the common people. So this policy aims at making awareness, creating awareness that late marriage is always better and late childbearing is always better. The fourth point is raising awareness about the methods of family planning and making available uh, contraceptives. Family planning is not just about contraceptives, it is about planning when you will have the first baby, when you will have a second baby, what should be the age between them, how many you will have, what education are you going to provide for them, how are you going to provide for their needs. Because see, the responsibility is you are bringing one human being into the world, and since that human being is going to depend on you, because he cannot start earning from the day one in the world. So that is known as family planning. What is what is a person planning about his own family? How is he going to feed them? And what are they going to become? Are they just going to become gundas, or they become something, somebody useful to the society? That is family planning, not just controlling the number of babies. The fifth point is raising awareness about sexually transmitted diseases and protection from unwanted pregnancies. Because our youth, because they are in the reproductive age, and also there's a tendency to experiment sexually, and uninformed and uneducated experiments leads to lot of problems. They leads to diseases. Some of the diseases can be cured, but some cannot be cured, they end up in death. And then there are unwanted pregnancies, and that puts a lot of mental pressure on this unwed mother, or the and that also puts a lot of pressure on that baby also. When he's born, people ask, who is your father? That puts a big psychological pressure on that, and often such pregnancies are terminated. They just go for abortion, and they kill the baby. The killing is also killing, because that baby was also a human being. This is the end of the chapter. Give it a thumbs up if you like it, and wait for the question answers. Bye till then.